Okay, in previous chapter we created this branch, and now we're ready to move on and create a new variation from it. And in this variation we are going to include leaves as well. So you should know that I created a new version of save from this, calling it branch leaves cluster, so that I do not lose that previous one. And if I do lose something, I have something to go back to. Okay, first let's create a material. Okay, in here I'm going to it and call it leaves. And again, we have to go in here and paste the direction and bring in the files that we need. Okay, for opacity and normal. And because we're going to take a screenshot and include a lot of the settings, I'm going to import all of the maps as well, because if I do not import them, the material that we export from this isn't going to include these. Okay, let's bring in the specular. As always, for metallic, we really do not want anything. And subsurface, we bring the translucency. And for the amount, I'm putting it to 2, okay? And we need to hit two-sided as well, so that both sides get shown. And now we need to create the leaves and attach them to this. But I feel like for creating a better leaves, I need to align these to the direction of the growth of the pattern. So, parent, excuse me. So I'm going here, and for the starting angle, I'm going to make them point out somehow and bring this up to something like this. And for the roll also, I'm going to make it 0 and make this one 0 as well, because I want the minimum amount of noise in my branches. And one more setting that we need to manipulate is the noise. So I'm going to very minimal value and the late noise as well. Let's put it to something like this, or 0, and disable the variance as well, because I want really minimum amounts of noise into this. Okay, and now I'm happy with the placement of the small branches in here, which are going to be acted as the twigs. But for this one, I'm going to select this branch. Let's select its generator and go to the node mode and start selecting this and bring it up. And also I'm going to change the start angle to something higher and make the noise really low on this. Okay, this is a lot better. And now let's go to generators. And now it's time to introduce the leaves in the mix. So in here, I'm going to add the leaves instead of batch leaves. And I see that this doesn't have the batch leaves either, because batch leaves belongs to the VFX editor. So instead of adding the leaves, I'm going to the leaves in here and use one of the presets to get us going. So I'm going to use the Hurl, which uses the phyllotaxy and gives us some preset for us to go with. So let's go create leaf meshes. So let's go in here and I'm going to hit edit. And again, I'm going for this one. And still I'm going for this same leaf. And again, use the masking method. And because this is going to be high poly, we're not really concerned about the amount of the polygon that it creates. We are going as much as we go. So let's go for this. And now for the target poly count, I'm going to hit 50 and within mask. Now it created a very good, and since this is a high poly, we're going to add lots of tessellation to activate a lot of maneuvers on it. So let's go here and guess the pivot. I'm going to put the pivot in here. Let's zoom on it so that we are going to be a bit exact and angle it to where we want to. Okay, something like this. And we're going to use this as a high poly. And for low poly, and we're done now. So let's go for leaves. and go to the material tab, pick up the leaves material, and now you see it has picked up the material that we had there. And we can go for the leaves cutout which we created to be more exact. So now there are some things that we need to do. For the children's per node, I'm going to put 2 so that we are getting only 2 leaves per node, and instead bring the intermediate length down so that we get more branches and more leaves per branch. Something like this, and just give it a bit of spread value and extend parent hit to any so that one leaf gets spawned there. So let's go to skin, and I'm going to bring the size down. And if you hit use actual size, it's going to make them really small in this case. But on other cases, it makes them big or medium, depending on the situation. So I'm going for here, make them a bit smaller. And to make them a bit more beautiful, we need to go for the parents and instead fix these. Okay, let's go for generation and start adding more. So let's go for 5 and let's go to spine, and we need to align them in another direction. And one more setting that we can do is going for the ancestor in here and make them grow in their own direction. Okay, something like this. And let's go for the leaves themselves. And now I want to have the leaves based on these big branches to be smaller in the end. Okay, now we need to add a bit of more fold and curve, but we're not going to be so extreme because we need to have a good read in the normal map. So we do not need something like this. We want this to be as planar as possible. We're only just going to add a bit of noise to make them randomized. So let's go for orientation, make them face towards the sky, and using the fold and align can really make them a lot better. Now you see we do not have any of those intersections anymore, and it's looking a lot more realistic. And let's see what the face does. I do not really actually need to do that. And I feel like this is good enough for this. Let's go for skin and make them a bit bigger. Okay, something like this. Now it's looking a lot more like the bush that we expected. We have good leaves, we have good variation, and we have a lot of randomization. And let's make this one a bit bigger so that we have more randomization in terms of leaves. And I want more green in here than brown of the branches. So I made the size of the leaves a bit bigger so that we have these in here. So again, let's go for F10. And we need to export it. So we have the albedo, opacity, normal, gloss, and AO. And now because in the previous lesson we removed the subsurface and subsurface amount, we need to bring them in. So we need to hit add image a couple of times, and now we have these to be chosen from. So we have AO on the 5th channel and on the 6th channel. Let's set it and choose the subsurface. It's going to be in the material and subsurface. And for the next one, I'm going to bring subsurface amount. And if you want to have any custom things, you can do that as well. So hit OK. And now in here also we need to set a name for it. I'm happy with this name, and hit save so that these get saved out. And here it is. And now the logic is there. If you want to have another variation of this, you can save this one as another variation and choose, for example, one of these meshes to have a yellow variation as well. So I'm going to do that now. I created a new save. So I'm going to the leaf and material and hit a plus icon so that we get another one. So let's go in here to the material, add another one and hit edit. And now I'm going to pick one of these yellow ones in here. And since we are using the same leaf, all of the settings that we added, including the curl, including adding all of those offsets, are going to be calculated on this one as well. So I'm not going for a pure yellow, I'm going for this one instead. So let's mask this part out. Okay, something like this. And let's clear the mask, refine it just a bit to be a bit more exact on that. And looks like the maximum amount of vertices for the target that we have is going to be 20. So no problem. Hit within mask. Looks like there's a problem. So let's delete these. And I need to bring this one here and mask this part out. Okay, something like this. And I'm not really caring about the topology if it's bad or if it's good, because this is not going to be used as the final product. And we're going to only use a screenshot from it, so there's no problem. And guess the pivot, and I'm going to bring the pivot right in here in the connection point and angle it just a bit to something like this, and tessellate it just a bit and bring it to high poly. And done. And now let's go to the material. In here for the second one, select the leaves, and now we see these one in action as well. We have the yellow ones and we have the green ones as well. But if you want to decrease the yellow ones, you can decrease them. But if you want to have ultimate yellows, you can bring them in. But since the majority of the leaves that are going to use there are green, I'm going to add just a bit of variation in there. So let's make this one too. Something like this is okay. Again, let's hit F10. And since all of the settings are set for us, including the subsurface amount and subsurface, we're going to do export them. And I found a problem in here. I didn't rename this one to subsurface. Let's go in here. And this one is subsurface amount. Let's set this to subsurface. And copy this, bring it here. And name it subsurface amount so that the naming gets better. And here we are in here, hit save, and all of them are going to get saved there. And again, here we are in the game ready bush scene that we had, and this is the final scene that we're going to be creating. Okay, let's go to material, and I'm going to create a couple of new materials. One leaves new, and one leaves old. Okay, let's go and start placing the outputs. Now we need to go here and paste the direction of the colors that we set there. Okay, this is it. And first we're going to bring the branch material. Or first, let's bring the leaves new. And later on I create a material for this named branch. So let's click on this, hit open, and since the naming belongs to the SP tree, it's telling us that it found some more outputs to put in. Do you want to use them? So hit yes. It's going to auto import all of those outputs in for you. And let's go into materials tab, settings, and hit two-sided. Okay, now the two-sided material is in. We have the color, opacity, normal, gloss, the specular, and also we need to import the subsurface and subsurface amount as well. So let's go for, and this is the subsurface map that belongs to it. And for subsurface amount also, I'm going to put to 1. No, let's bring in the map. This is the subsurface amount map. And to take effect, I'm going to set it to 1 so that the leaf get a lot of the light shine into them. So now let's go to leaves old, and in here also I'm going to select the old leaves, which is this one. And now it's again telling us to use other outputs, yes, And for subsurface amount, let's select them, and this is the subsurface amount. Open and put it to 1 to take effect, so that we'll get these leaves as well. And now I'm going to create another one, add new, and I'm going to call it branches. And again, this time we're going to use this branches and two-sided. And for this one as well, I'm going to set to two-sided. Okay, we got the material set up, and the workflow is now the same as previous ones when we were creating grasses. We are manipulating these big branches, but we're not going to use them as the final geometry. We are going to go to Skin tab and convert them to spine only, so that they do not add any extra geometry into the scene, but we're going to manipulate these. So let's go for polygons to be able to see this, and we need to manipulate this to get that shape that we wanted. So for the absolute, I'm going to increase the size just a bit, and I'm going to bring the variance value down so that we do not get a lot of randomizations. And for these higher ones, I'm going to bring them down to make the higher smaller a bit. So let's take them again. I need to make them a bit bigger. So let's select this and go to the generation, and I need to go to extend parent and hit any so that it caps this part off for us. And as I said, these are going to be used as the spine and not the geometry. So there's no amount of geometry wasted on this. So let's go for starting angle. I'm going to bring this down, and not a lot of variation. And for the higher ones, I'm going to make them point right up to the sky. Let's see about the start roll. I'm better having something like this, and I'm going to add a bit of gravity into these. Okay, something like this. And now we need to go to Skin tab and set this to spine only. And now I'm going to bring a front on top of this. So you know the workflow. In previous sessions for creating grass, we used the trunk to be used as the spine and spawn the front on top of them. So this is front, and now we need to go and bring in the leaves new and put them on here. So this is what we get actually. But instead of bringing in the leaves new, I'm going to bring branches so that we have the branches first. So these are the branches, and now we need to create one mesh so that it sticks to the geometry as good as possible. So let's go to material. In here, branches, we need to create a cutout mesh from this. So hit edit, and now since we have only a single element in here, I'm going to hit whole image. So it creates a mesh for us on top of that. And now we have 20 vertices, which is good somehow, and hit this one and bring it on top. And now it has selected that. And for attaching a bit more, I'm going to pivot and put the pivot in here and assign it. So let's see. And if you do not see anything being attached, is because of the front. So let's go to the geometry, and for the start offset, you need to bring the start offset closer to this one. Okay, this is looking now a lot better. And let's go for edit mesh, and I'm going to set this one to 15 and create from whole image so that it creates a medium version for us, and set 10 whole image and make it low so that for the loading system, when we go out, another low poly version gets rendered instead of being so high poly, and it's going to save a lot of trouble from us. So now we need to apply these and do all changes to them. And to manipulate these, we have the front and the a spine in here to manipulate. So let's go to the spine tab, and I'm going to bring a lot more variations. Okay, something like this. Let's see about them, and let's add a bit of a spread, a bit of a spiral, so that they rotate and not rotate all of them at the same angle. So again, for the rotation and a bit of randomized rotation as well. And I'm going to add as much randomization as possible to get this one better than I want it. So deselect the spine and try to inspect that from all of the sides to see if you have anything missing. And overall, I'm happy with the shape. And now we need to bring in the branches that had the leaves on them. So we know that on these spines, on these branches, we have something to connect to. But on these fronts, if we are going to connect these to the fronts, we really do not have a connection point. For example, if I add leaf to this, it's not going to connect. If I go and add a front again, it's not going to connect. Let's add a front. You see, it's not going to connect. So how do we do that to be able to connect these branches to these images so that these have something for these branches to grow off of? So to remedy that, we go to the branches and let's edit the mesh. And here there are the anchor points. If you bring in an anchor, for example, create an anchor here, create more anchors, you are able to create anchor points on this. So let's assign this one to the high poly for now. And now if we go and start to add leaves, we are getting leaves on those anchor points. And let's go for the leaves and generation, and now it reminds that it has taken from the spine and front. And in here on the generation we have all anchors, and anchor 1 and anchor 2, you see anchor 2 is not available because we only created anchor 2 system, excuse me, anchor 1 system, and it's now spawning the leaves on these areas just like the branches that it used to. For example, if I start to increase a lot of anchors and replace with the high poly and put it to all anchors, you see we are getting a lot of leaves in here, and absolutely 363 branches coming off from this. And we can take these leaves and apply that material to them to have the layering effect. So because this lesson is already taking too long and we really do not need to do that in this lesson, I'm going to stop this and continue the work in the next lesson. Okay, see you there.